Welcome to Hard Time Sports with Matthew. It's been a little over a month since I've been doing a blog. Since I did a blog. This blog is NCAA tournament, March Madness 2018 for college basketball, the play-in games, and a round of 64. You have two play-in games today and two tomorrow, and then they go on, and the winners of those games go on to the round of 64. So we're going to do the play-in game picks and my round of 64 picks in this episode. So for the two games today, you have two 16 seeds playing against each other, and the winner of that game will play Villanova. I'm going to take Radford to beat LIU Brooklyn. I don't know much about either team, but they just have a better record, so I'm going to take Radford. And then into today's second game or whatever, you have St. Bonaventure versus UCLA. I know a lot about UCLA. They have a storied history, won a lot of championships, but I'm going to take St. Bonaventure in an upset to win this game, and the winner will take on the Florida Gators in a round of 64. Now let's go to tomorrow's playing games. You have NC Carolina and Texas Southern. I'm going to take UNC Central because they just have a better record at 19-5. Texas Southern, a losing record. So the winner of that will take on Xavier in a round of 64. And then the last playing game, you have Arizona State and Syracuse. Everybody knows about Syracuse's zone defense. If you haven't seen it, you probably won't figure it out in time. So I'm going to take Syracuse to beat Arizona State. And the winner of that game will take on TCU in a round of 64. So those are my playing games picks. Now, let's go to the round of 64 picks. Let's start off in the South region. You have the number 1, Villanova, versus the number 16, UMBC. I think Virginia will beat them easily. Now, let's go to the next game in that South region. The 8th-seeded Creighton against the 9th-seed Kansas State. I'm going to take Creighton to beat Kansas State. Game's a pick'em, and 8 versus 9 is usually the best matchup. So I'm going to take Creighton over Kansas State. Now let's go to the next game in that region. The 5-seed Kentucky versus the 12 Davidson. Every year in the NCAA tournament, a 12-seed beats a 5, but I don't see that in this particular instance. So I'm going to take Kentucky to beat Davidson. Now let's go to the next game in that South region. You have the 4-seed Arizona Wildcats against the Buffalo. The 4 versus 13. I'm going to take Arizona to beat Buffalo. Now let's go to the next game in the South region. You have Miami, Florida, the 6th seed versus the 11, Loyola Chicago. I'm going to take Loyola Chicago to beat Miami of Florida in a round of 64. Now let's go to the next game in a round of 64 in the South region. You have the Tennessee Volunteers against Wright State, the 3-seed versus 14th seed. I'm going to take the 3-seed Tennessee to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the South region. You have the 7-seed Nevada versus the 10-seed Texas. 7 versus 10 is like a pick'em game. Very close games. I'm going to take the 7-seed Nevada to beat Texas. Now, let's go to the last game in the round of 64 in the South region. You have the Cincinnati Bearcats, the 2-seed versus the 15-seed Georgia State. I'm going to take the 2-seed, the Cincinnati Bearcats. So in the South region, I have Virginia going on, Creighton going on, Kentucky, Arizona, Loyola Chicago, Tennessee, Nevada, and Cincinnati in the South region to go to the round of 32. Now let's go to the region below, the West. You have the 1 seed Xavier taking on NC Central, Texas Southern winner. I took NC Central. Doesn't matter. I think Xavier will get it done and will beat them. Now let's go to the next game in the West region. The 8th seed, Missouri, and against the 9th seed, Florida State. I took Missouri to win this game. Pick'em game, like I said. Let's go to the next game. You have the 5 seed, Ohio State, and the 12 seed, South Dakota State. This is where I have an upset. I'm taking South Dakota State to beat Ohio State, a 12 to beat a 5. Now let's go to the next game in the West region. You have the 4 seed Gonzaga Bulldogs against the 13 seed UNCG, wherever they may be. I think Gonzaga will win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the West region. The 6th seed Houston versus the 11th seed San Diego State. I took San Diego State to beat Houston in the round of 64. Now let's go to the next game in the West region. You have the 3 seed Michigan Wolverines against the 14 seed Montana. I took Michigan to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the West region. You have the 7 seed Texas A&M against the 10 seed Providence. I'm taking the 10 seed Providence to beat Texas A&M in that round of 64 game. Now let's go to the next game in the West region. You have the 2 seed North Carolina Tar Heels and the 15 seed Lipscomb. I took UNC North Carolina to win that game. So in the round of 64 in the West region, I have Xavier, Missouri, San Diego State, Gonzaga, San Diego State, Michigan, Providence, and UNC. Now let's go over to the East region. You have Villanova will take on the winner of LIU Brooklyn and Radford. I picked Radford in the playing game. It's not going to matter. I've taken Villanova to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the East region. You have the 8 seed Virginia Tech against the 9 seed Alabama. I'm taking Alabama to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the East region. You have the 5 seed West Virginia versus the 12 seed Murray State. I'm taking West Virginia to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the East region. You have the 4 seed Wichita State versus the 13 seed Marshall. I'm taking Wichita State to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the East region. You have the 6 seed Florida Gators against the winner of St. Bonaventure and UCLA. I picked the Florida Gators to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in the East region. You have Texas Tech, the 3 seed against the 14 seed SF Austin. I'm taking SF Austin in an upset to beat Texas Tech in that game. Now let's go to the next game in the East region. You have the 7 seed Arkansas against the 10 seed Butler. I'm taking Butler to win that game. Now let's go to the last game in that region in the round of 64. You have the Purdue Boilermakers against CSU Farmington. I'm going to take Purdue to win that game in the round of 64. So in that East region, I have Villanova, Bama, West Virginia, Wichita State, Florida, SF Austin, Butler, and Purdue. And now let's go to my last picks in the round of 64. In the Midwest region, I have the number 1 seed Kansas Jayhawks beating the number 16 seed Penn in the Midwest region. Now the next game in that region, you have the 8 seed Seton Hall versus the 9 seed North Carolina State. I'm taking North Carolina State to win that game. Now let's go to the next game in that region. Like I said before, a 12-5 upset. You have another one here. The 5 seed Clemson against the 12th seed, New Mexico State. I'm going to take New Mexico State to beat Clemson in the Midwest region in a round of 64. Now, let's go to the next game. You have the 4th seed Auburn versus the 13 seed Charleston. I'm going to take Auburn to win this game. Now, let's go to the next game. You have TCU against Arizona State. Syracuse winner. Not going to matter. I think Syracuse will win the playing game, and then I think they'll beat TCU to go to the round of 32. Now, let's go to the next game. You have the 3 seed Michigan State against the 14 seed Bucknell. I think Michigan State will win this game. Now, let's go to the next game. You have the 7 seed Rhode Island against the 10 seed Oklahoma. This is the one I have a dilemma with when it comes to the NCAA committee by putting Oklahoma in this tournament. I think Rhode Island, the 7 seed, will beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma should not be in this tournament. In the last 19 games, Oklahoma was 7-12 in their last 19 games. That does not deserve a spot in the NCAA tournament, and I think Rhode Island will beat them, and the committee will be looking like fools for putting Oklahoma in the tournament. Now, let's go to the last game of the round of 64 in the Midwest region. You have the 2 seed Duke against the 15 seed Iona. I took Duke to win that game. Those are my picks for the playing games for today and tomorrow, and for Thursdays and Fridays, round of 64 games. I hope you enjoyed today's telecast. I'm Matthew. Enjoy the blog.